This video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Hey guys, Paul here. Today we are going to talk about are pros really taking 5+ grams of gear. I really got the gym bro stirred up the other week with my how much gear do pros really take. I got some really hostile and angry messages from people, like DMs and emails and comments telling me that I was full of shit and lying, and I had some sort of agenda about talking about these doses, and that's not what people really take. They're taking, guys are taking 10 grams of gear. It just kind of blew me away how upset and angry I made people. I mean, seriously, I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna dig into it today. I'm gonna explain my logic here, and hopefully things will make a little more sense. And we'll talk about our pros taking 5+ grams of gear. Before we do so, please take the time to subscribe to my channel. It's the best way you can show your appreciation for all the hard work that I am doing. If you want to get in contact with me about coaching or a consultation, you can do so by emailing me at bigp3rd@gmail.com, or you can shoot me a DM on Instagram at Paul K. Barnett. My contact information is in the video description below. If you have a question, comment, or you want to tell me how terrible of a human being I am for ruining all of your illusions about how much gear pro bodybuilders take, please do so in the comment section below. We can duke it out down there. And if you like this video, hit that thumbs up button. Okay, so I got guys so butt hurt. There were a lot of chafed asses after that video I put up about saying that the typical pro I talk to takes something like 2.5 grams of gear. Keep in mind that's an average. There, with anything, there are outliers. There's the less. Anybody who understands statistics. And I'm a mathematics guy. I have a background in computer science. I look at data all the time, and I try to think things through critically. And just because some dumbass is taking 10 grams of gear doesn't mean everybody's taking 10 grams of gear. It's like going out to the bar with your buddies. You've always got that one dumb friend that's got to drink a bottle of liquor and chase it down with 6 beers, make an ass out of himself and get sick and puke on the floor when the rest of us are just having 5 or 6 and having a good time. There are some people that just cannot moderate themselves, that think that more is better, more is always better, and they go in excess. They don't do anything in moderation. Same is true with bodybuilding. There are dudes out there, and I know of them, I've heard of them, that are taking, I'm sure are taking 5 grams of gear. I've heard of dudes taking 10 grams of gear. It is monumentally stupid, and I'm going to tell you why. And it's really pointless. They're not really getting anything else additionally out of it. But with all things, there are outliers. So you look in bodybuilding, there are guys that barely take fucking anything. I heard about, if what I've heard about Dexter Jackson is true, the guy barely took anything. Like people said it was a laughable amount of gear that he took, and he lasted until he was 50 in pro bodybuilding. That's why. And he just had elite genetics, and some guys just respond. Also, once you have size, it doesn't take much to maintain it. That's what people don't understand. The more size you have, the more it takes to maintain it, but really, it's not that hard to maintain size once you have it. So these guys may have blasted large amounts of gear at one point, and then they just maintain it. John Jewett is an example. Another example, John Jewett, doesn't run more than 1 gram of gear ever. I think he has in the past, and he probably did blast his way up to getting the size where he's at, but he's a 212 competitor, so he's at the maximum end of the 212 class and doesn't need any more size, so it doesn't take much to maintain what he has. Now there are other extremes. I have my video up about Dallas McCarver and why I think him taking over 10 grams of gear is a little ridiculous. Maybe he was, who knows? I mean, the dude's organs were fucking fried. But he was definitely a guy that was probably at 5+ grams of gear, without a doubt. I'm not disputing that. Was he taking 10? I don't know. That seems a bit dubious to me. But maybe, who knows? He was in his early 20s and his organs were completely fucking fried. One thing I will tell you, the guys that take 5+ grams of gear, what do they have in common? They all fucking die. They die, people. I just, and I don't want to crap all over Boston Lloyd, but he did some really silly shit, and he's not with us anymore. The guys that do the really silly shit don't last. It's the same thing with drinking. You got your buddy that goes out and hammers a shit ton of beer and liquor all the time. He's not going to last. The people that do it in moderation typically can last. Now there's outliers there too. So another thing I want to bring up is think about the logistics of doing 5+ grams of gear. Just the pure logistics of it. So I thought about it. If you're going to take 5 grams of gear a week, you're looking at 3 cc's a day injection. Where are you going to put all that oil at? I mean, my God. Anybody who's ever taken a 3 cc shot can tell you it hurts like a fucking mule kicked you, and you need like a week for that spot to be ready for another shot, sometimes more. So my question is, where are the guys putting all this oil at? Maybe they're jamming it in there, but I would think these guys would have lumps all over them if they were jamming that much. The cost of it too, you're running 5 cc's a gear or 5 grams of gear a week. You're going to be spending $1,000 to $1,500 a month on steroids. You just are. But most pro bodybuilders are broke as a fucking joke. Only the guys at the very top are actually making money, unless they're a social media influencer. Most of these guys are just scraping by. They're working at gyms. They're training people, making a few dollars. They're just barely getting by. They don't have 20, 30 grand a year to go out and drop on gear. And I know people keep bringing up, they're sponsors and yada, yada, yada. I don't know of any fucking sponsors that are paying for gear for people. Seriously, people, come the fuck on. I mean, maybe the top Olympia guys, but that's just absolutely asinine. I don't know of anybody that's doing that. Another thing too, I had several people reach out to me telling me that guys are taking 20 units of GH a day. Try 20 units of GH sometime and let me know how you feel. I've pushed as high as 10 before. I couldn't feel my hands at 10. My hands went completely numb, and my blood sugar got all out of whack. 8 units seems to be the outside limit for me. 6 seems to be the sweet spot. Plus the cost of it. If you're taking 20 units a day of Humatrope, you're talking about $200 a day in growth hormone. 73 grand a year in growth hormone. Once again, I ask you, where are they getting the money to take $73,000 in growth hormone? Seriously, with that said, there are always extremes. There are always people that do dumb shit that makes no sense to the rest of us. I know there are people that blow that kind of money on recreational drugs. I think that was monumentally stupid too. I know people that are alcoholics that spend shit tons of money on alcohol. 10 grand a year, on drinking fucking alcohol. I mean, just stupid shit like that. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but once again, think about the averages. Where the averages at? Those are outliers. Those are the extremes. There are extremes in anything. There are people that are outliers and do crazy dumb shit. And I don't doubt it happens, but I am confident they are not the average. There's also the bell curve of benefits versus damage. So this is another thing that people don't get. More gear does equal more growth, but that growth descends as you go up. There is a bell curve to it. And I believe, from what I have seen, that bell curve is somewhere around 2.5 to 3 grams, where it starts to bend backwards. You get less out of it, and you get more damaging effects. So the additional growth you get past a certain point is negligible, and you're just compounding the effects, the side effects. The side effects continue to get worse and worse and worse with little to no additional benefit. And that's why I believe that most bodybuilders, most pro bodybuilders, are somewhere operating somewhere in that 2 to 2.5 gram range, maybe a little bit more, maybe up to 3. The guys I have talked to are somewhere, I probably was a little conservative when I said 1.5 in my previous video, so it's probably more like 2 to 3 grams. But still, that I don't know. When back in the 90s, in the early 2000s, you never heard of people taking more than a gram. That was extreme. People don't. That's another thing. I just don't think people realize is this stuff's readily available now. You couldn't even get that much back then if you wanted to, unless you were just completely plugged in. And that's why nobody back then was taking that much. I know people don't believe me when we talk about Dorian Yates taking 1.5 grams to a gram, and 1.5 to 1.75 grams a year. That's probably all he could get access to back then. Maybe he took more later on, but it was way more expensive. It was way harder to get, and we considered over a gram to be extreme doses back in the 90s and early 2000s. Now there's just this warped perception that it's weird to me how the dosages have just gotten extreme. So, and back to the bell curve. Think about the bell curve I talked about. Dallas McCarver, we can all agree that he was taking ridiculous amounts of stuff. How much he was taking, that is up for debate. Only he and his close associates knew what he was taking. But let's compare him to Dorian Yates, who claims to have only taken 1.5 to 1.75 grams a year, which I personally believe. You may not, but was Dallas that much bigger than Dorian? I don't think so. I think they were equally as big. There wasn't much difference in size between the two of them. So, plus Dorian, I think he's in his 60s now, and he's still very healthy. If he had been running those crazy amounts of gear, he would not be alive right now, guys. He just wouldn't be alive right now. He wouldn't be as healthy as he is. So I don't know. I mean, so that you keep that in mind when you're pushing these dosages up. That there is a curve where it bends backwards, and I'm not condoning that somebody goes right out of the gate and takes this kind of gear. Another thing that perplexes me, and there's a preponderance of it now that I'm talking to people, and that I get a lot of people reaching out to me for coaching and consultation, is I am just absolutely blown away at the skinny guys that are taking crazy amounts of gear. 165, 180 pound dudes taking 2.5 grams of gear, 3 grams of gear, making themselves sick, and having all kinds of problems, and they're not even big. I mean, how is that even possible? So that just goes to show you that more does not equal better. And coming out of the gate, taking those dosages is unnecessary. You just don't need it. You're not going to make any extra gains you make are going to be marginal. As you get bigger, you need more. That is for sure. You need more to progress and more to maintain. That is for sure. Think of it like food. If you came out of the gate eating 5,000 calories a day as a 160-pound guy, you're just going to make yourself sick and get fat. You have to work up to that over a period of years. If you try to put 500 pounds on the bench press and bench 500 pounds when you're 165 pounds, you're just going to split yourself in half and hurt yourself. You have to work up to that over a period of years. It's the same thing with the gear. Typical, I've got another video up about this if you want to go back through and look at it, but the typical pro bulking cycle that I hear is somewhere between 1 and 1.5 grams a test, 1.5 being on the high end. Typical, like 1 gram, somewhere between 600 and a gram of an anabolic, usually Nandrolone, Primo, EQ, or seem to be the anabolics that most pros run. and 50 to 100 milligrams a day of an oral like Anadrol, D-Bol, or Anavar. You guys know I don't like orals. Not everybody runs orals, but and then insulin and GH with that. That's somewhere like in the 8 to 10 units of GH is what you'll see most pros running at a bulking cycle. So you're at somewhere between, with a cycle like that, you're somewhere between 2 and 3 grams of total load. That is what a typical pro, from what I've talked to, from the guys I've heard from, that is what a typical pro runs. Like I said, there are outliers. There are guys that run way more. There are guys that run way less. I'm not telling you to go out and do this, so please do not. If you're just getting started, be conservative. Be conservative. You don't need, these are guys that are at the top of their game. They are professionals. It would be like going from the flag football league and trying to play in the NFL. You're going to get fucking hurt. You're going to get destroyed. So, guys, have some common sense when it comes to this stuff. I think people just don't think of things through with any sort of logic or critical thought. This stuff, when you talk about guys taking 5-10 grams of gear, like everybody's taking that much, it just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Like I said, I will acknowledge there are guys that do it, but they're the outliers. So hopefully this helps bring some perspective. I know I'm going to get people that are going to have chafed buttholes from this. They're going to think I'm lying, that I have some sort of agenda I'm promoting here, that I'm just making this shit up and whatever. You believe whatever you want. I know what I've done, and I know what dudes I talk to are doing, and it's not what most people think. That I'm telling you, with the people that I work with, that I consult, that I've trained, it's the smallest dudes that take the most shit almost always. The guys that are big aren't even taking that much because they have great genetics. They work hard in the gym. They follow the diet. That's not saying they couldn't be better if they pushed a little bit harder, but most of those guys aren't taking what you think they're taking. They just aren't. All right, guys, hopefully this helps. Take care.